Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Gray Matters podcast. My name is Josh Perry, and today's episode is a recording from a Facebook Live I did with my private Facebook group called the Change Makers Facebook group, which is a group of former and current clients, friends and family of their clients, friends and family of mine, and it's just a place for me to share all the things that I've learned, all the things that I've implemented, all the things I've worked through with my clients, to share things as I learn them and experience them, and for everyone to communicate with one another and create a community of support and like-minded individuals just wanting to make changes to empower themselves to create the most ideal version of their lives through optimizing health and performance. And today's episode was a recording from a poll I did in the Facebook group, and the top ranked poll was on health, and that was what most people wanted to hear about. So we dove right into health as I see it, my perspective, what I've learned and what I've witnessed, and I break it down into two pieces: the mental and the physical aspects of health. And it's an interesting journey I've been on to have that understanding today and that belief, and I really encourage you to check this episode out. Hit me up, join the Facebook group if you haven't, and just see what you think. See what questions may come up, what connections may come from listening to this episode, what ways you can see how you're either contributing or taking away from becoming your best self, performing at the highest level possible. And I talk about what performance is beyond just what people think in physical performance, but with your brain and your mentality and your emotions, things like that. So without further ado, I give you today's episode on health from the Change Makers Facebook group. I hope you enjoy. And we're live. Hey everyone, my name is Josh Perry, and welcome to the Change Makers series. This is a series that I've devoted time to personally learning how to create change in my life that is ideal, the ideal version of my life. So creating change that is going to manifest that, and want to share what I've been learning, experiencing, and ultimately just share it with you guys. That way you can better consciously design your ideal life by optimizing all the things that you can control, which is the way you think, the way you act, and the way you feel, which is going to allow you to move forward in life the way you want. And so I normally don't have notes with me. I usually just run off the cuff, but today's topic is on health, and that's by popular demand in the poll I ran in the Change Makers Facebook group. So I decided to put together some thoughts, some notes to go over some important topics that I think are very profound to bring up in this area of health, which is very individualized, very specific to the person, and very personal, I'd say. We all have our own ideas of health, what that means to us, what that looks like, what that feels like, and I want to do my best job sharing my truth in what health means to me and how we can quantify health in each other's lives individually and with the people that we care about in our lives. So for those that don't know much about who I am, just a quick rundown. I have plenty of resources to where you can learn more about me and the journey I've been through and what I'm all about. But the bullets, if you will, are I'm originally born and raised in Massachusetts, grew up playing sports right away, fell in love with BMX, slowly took over my life to where I decided to drop out of high school to support my family to chase a dream of becoming a professional BMX athlete. And I moved from Massachusetts to North Carolina and was very successful in chasing that dream. And along the way, I had a lot of different challenges, injuries, financial challenges, mental challenges, and then also 3 different brain tumor diagnoses, which really challenged me to audit who I was, the life I was leading, and what I was choosing to do with that life. And so that led me to where I've learned today how I can optimize all the things that are in my control that will create a better probability of what I want in my future, because we can't control the outcomes, we can't control the future, but we can control our state of being now and how we choose to move forward. So that's a little bit about me. And like I said, normally I don't have notes together. I just kind of go straight off of what's on my mind and what's in my heart, and usually have some questions to go off of. And today we do have a bunch of questions that you guys commented in on the post in the Facebook group. And for those that are listening on a different platform, future time when I release this, I do have a Facebook group that's free to join, and it's just a group of people in a community sense that want to support one another to create the change that they want to see in their lives, personally and then externally, because I believe that in order to see change that we want in I guess, in the world, we have to start with ourselves. It begins with ourselves. The more we walk our talk, the more we'll see that change occur. And so again, by popular demand, by vote, health was the main topic. So that's what we're going with today. And I want to quickly start by defining the actual definition of health. And depending on which source you look up, I found two common ones. And so health is defined as the state of being free from illness or injury. It's also said that a person's mental or physical condition, that's what encompasses health. So I want you to think first, before I move on and share more of my thoughts and then get into the questions, I want you to think about what health means to you specifically in regards to your physical and mental condition. So take a minute and think about that. Maybe, I love notes and I love journaling. So maybe take a minute to write that question out. And then after this audio or this video, whichever way you're consuming this, take some time to explore that. Like, what does health mean to you? And not what you've heard, not what other people think, not what you've been conditioned to believe it is, but think about how health shows up in your life, mentally, physically, and what it really means to you. And so for me, health encompasses the mental aspect of a human being, the physical and the spiritual aspect of being a human being. And I think those three components of being a human being are really important. And the way I measure health is the level of performance, growth, and alignment with all three of those areas. Because I believe in holistic health. It's not just one or the other. You can't have all the finances and on, the physical body and eat the nutritious foods, one or the other, but then lack the other. You can't have poor relationships on a daily basis, but eat all the organic food. Like, it's a combination that makes up a holistic approach to who you are as a human being and how you interact in the world. So to me, that's what I believe health is made from. And I believe that these three areas of our being are really affected and contribute to the two core aspects of being a human being. And that's our physical and our mental health. Back to one of the versions I found that defines health. It's a person's mental or physical condition. So I think that's a good way to lump all these micro pieces of health and performance and what it means to categorize them one way or another. You have the physical being and then you have the mental being. And so starting with the physical, that's when we're talking about the body, which, our brain can and definitely is included in that, but we'll save the brain mostly for the mental aspect. And you're going to see how the physical and the mental really affect one another. And there's this like complete synergy, and you can't have one optimized than the other. It just doesn't work that way. So the way I see the physical health broken down is into a few components. So we have the body composition. So that's your physical makeup. That's your your bones, your fat, your muscles, your skin, all the above that makes up your being as a physical human being. That's when people talk about are they overweight? Are they out of shape? Are they fit? Are they skinny? Are they fat? And the way I used to define health was based on my physical appearance. And for those that know my story, that logic, that perspective is what almost killed me, because I was judged by my cover. I was denied the things that I was experiencing, and I was asking for certain, scans to look at different aspects of my being, mostly my brain. And because I didn't look quote unquote unhealthy, I was denied, and then I was sent home with pain pills to manage the pain. And the rest of the story, again, I can point you other places to learn more about me. But that was my perspective on health. And I find that a lot of people, whether they're conscious of it or not, they've been conditioned to believe that health is determined by numbers on a scale or what you look like physically. And I learned very vividly that health is internal. And that's something that I'm very passionate about sharing. Again, anyone that's been following me for any amount of time recently to the last 9-10 years, you've heard me say health is internal. And that was something I learned the hard way. And it's my responsibility, I feel, to share the perspective that health is internal. And again, I don't want people to learn from a place of pain and suffering, because that's what almost, cost me my life. So health can be defined many different ways depending on the individual, depending on the perspective. But I believe looking at it from a physical and a number standpoint is the wrong way to be looking at it, because there's a lot of things going on in your inner world that maybe one way or another, maybe not, will reflect and manifest physically. But in most cases, I think we just look at that word incorrectly. And so I share my journey just so people can have a different perspective to think of things differently, because that's what we're all about. We're about creating change, and creating change starts with our mind and how we look at things. The next thing in the physical world of health is, exercise. And to everyone, that's going to look different. That doesn't just mean what I used to think, like just going to the gym and doing these specific intense workouts. Like exercise could just be someone getting up and going for a walk multiple times a day, once a day, twice a day, every other day. It depends on where you're coming from and who, like how you're made up of it as an individual. So, again, perspective is important, but I think getting to the idea of moving your body on a regular basis, if we can look at exercise as one of the elements of our physical health, it doesn't need to be just the gym. Find ways that you enjoy moving your body. And for me, for so long, that was riding my bike. And then through injuries and trial and error, I learned that, all right, maybe there's something else to doing more with my body than just riding my bike, which I love, And so I've found other ways, and going to the gym was something I never thought I would enjoy. But the point is learning ways to move your body that's going to contribute to your physical health and performance, your overall condition, back to the definition of health. I think that's really important, is find ways to move your body that feels good physically and mentally. Maybe there is going to be a little challenge, and that's what we want to do. We want to create some resistance with our physical being so that way we become stronger. But it doesn't have to be one way or another based on someone else. Just experiment, reach out, ask questions, educate yourself, and just see what you enjoy and what's really giving you the most benefit to your physical health. And now the third component that makes up our physical health that I think is overlooked, and we hear the word stress, and we hear it a lot, but I don't think people really quite understand. And I'm speaking from personal experience. I heard it all the time, and I just thought it was like, oh, I'm stressed out with work, I'm stressed out with school, or whatever it is. But there's a lot of things that make up stress and how stress responds in our body and what that does. And the main components of that, in my perspective, are diet. So the things that we eat, the things that we drink, whatever we ingest, that's considers a piece of your diet. It's not just a restrictive fad diet or mainstream diet. Like, that's a whole other topic. But the second piece is toxins that you may be aware of or may not be aware of. Things that you may be aware of are like, common things everyone is aware of probably is cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, but even pharmaceuticals, over the counter or prescribed, those can be toxins to the body. Certain foods could be toxic to different individuals, but if you don't know, you don't know. So that's another thing that I think is overlooked, but also processed food, to where it's the point that we call it ultra processed food. It's no longer just processed. There's so much science and engineering that goes into food, and these massive budgets that create these what they call bliss points, like this sensation in your mouth between these contrasting textures and taste, and like all these things that are marketed and built in a way to get people to buy and consistently consume them. But those could be considered toxins to different people, especially when we get into the processed, sugary and additives and all these things added to foods. And I think that's something that's overlooked, is what you eat could also be contributing to the stress in your body. It's not just mental stress, which we'll be talking about as well. And the third piece that could be contributing to stress in any one of us is energy. And it could be a lack of energy. And that's when we're talking about specifically mitochondria. And again, that's a whole deeper dive that I've done some videos and some podcasts about, and I'll do some more if you guys are interested in hearing more specifically about mitochondria and how it pertains to energy. But just a little quick crash course for those that aren't aware of mitochondria, or maybe have heard of them, maybe remember from high school. But mitochondria are the parts of your cells that are considered the power plants or the powerhouses of your cells. They use oxygen and food to make your body's natural energy currency called ATP. So if you can simply understand and remember that mitochondria create our body's energy currency from food and oxygen, that's pretty much all you need to know. But they also are responsible for creating inflammation and creating energy. And so if they're not creating enough energy while also creating too much inflammation, which is a natural response in our body, if you have this imbalance occurring and this mechanism working that's not in your favor, that's when your body is going to be, an overdrive, trying to use energy to create systems and fill these voids that are occurring. And so, when we're talking about physical stress, energy needs to be really a part of that conversation. And that's when we look at diet and toxins as well, because those are energy processes to metabolize food or the lack of. And so I think that that's something really, really important to think about. So again, physical health, I see it made up as your body composition, exercise, physical stress, which is made up of, the things you eat, the toxins you may or may not be aware of you're consuming, and then also energy crisis, or creating too much energy when we start storing it as fat. That's another way to look at that. Now, breaking into the mental side of health, the way I see it is this is a biological and neurochemical piece of our physical being. So this is where we start talking about the mind, but something that's becoming more talked about and more understood is how the mind actually influences the physiology of our body. Like your thoughts create chemical responses in the body that over time can actually physically affect you. And more importantly, your thoughts trigger certain chemicals that become what we know as emotions or feelings that will influence how we move forward in our lives. And so that's when we start, considering this unison of mind and body and how that makes up our health. So the first piece of the mental health side is mental stress. And again, we've all heard the word stress, but I think it's becoming more understood that the severity of stress chronically, not just in a moment, because that's where we build strength, that's where we grow, but chronically, if we don't design our lives in a way that are going to alleviate stress to the best of our abilities, it could lead to burnout and other issues where we're seeing a lot of mental health issues, especially right now, going through the COVID situation. I think that's waking people up to having more conversations about mental stress, mental health, and things like that. But the three things that come to mind for me when I was thinking about mental stress were diet, toxins. Again, you're going to see that being reoccurring to our health in all aspects, but also our thoughts and our belief systems. So I talked about diet, and some important things just to note on top of what I mentioned earlier is the stress we see in our body, mentally or physically, is strongly correlated to our levels of chronic blood sugar, meaning how high or how low your blood sugar may remain on a day-to-day basis, which is directly affected by what you put in your body and the thoughts you have, the exercise, the sleep, the whole 9 yards. That's what we're talking about, holistic health. And to keep it simple, just think about, foods that are raising your blood sugar on a regular basis is going to be creating more stress, more inflammation, which all these things travel to the brain and cause neuroinflammation and could create decreases in mental performance, which affects our physical performance, how we show up in life, and so on and so forth. So some other things to consider are, your diet also affects your hormone regulation or dysregulation, neurotransmitter imbalances or balances, which affect all sorts of things from cravings to habits to moods to just overall well-being and sense of well-being. And so the other thing to consider, I mentioned earlier, is toxins. We covered that, but toxins could also be looked at as things that steal energy from our body and could cause direct damage on top of that. So you think about that, something like alcohol is an easy example that in large amounts chronically, meaning regularly, causes direct harm. We know that. We've all heard about how it affects our brain or different things like that. But it also steals energy from the body, trying to get rid of or metabolize that alcohol that breaks down to ethanol and can be toxic. So when you think about toxins being they're stealing energy, but they're also directly causing damage to the body in various different ways. To each individual, it shows up different. But that's why it's really good to have an understanding of these things in a deeper perspective of how it interacts with your body personally. So that way you can create a system that works for you in your lifestyle, but also meets your goals of optimizing your health and performance. Because at the end of the day, you want to enjoy your life. But if you say you can't enjoy your life because of X, Y, or Z, whether that's alcohol, sugar, going to the gym and running 2 hours a day, if you say you can't live without those things or you can't enjoy your life without those things, that's where the mindset comes in, and to take a deeper look into why you're saying those things, why you have a vice attached to how you live your life and the things that you say you can't live without. So that's just something that comes to mind that I've been doing a lot of work with myself. And it all comes back to our emotions and some past experiences we've gone through. Like for me, I changed who I was internally based on a fear response of having my life challenged. So to me, I needed to become that person that was healthy because I wanted health. So rather than waiting for health to feel healthy, I just changed who I was, which involved changing my perspective around how I was living my life, how I could better live my life, and what that meant. So I started making healthier decisions. I started thinking in a healthy manner. And this is really important for understanding our goals. And that's another topic I'll be discussing later on in a future episode. But when we think about something we want in our lives, in order to reach that goal, we have to embody the version of ourselves that has that goal, that lives that life, that feels what we want to feel, that experiences what we want to experience. It's no longer. I believe we're not in a place anymore to think cause and effect. Like, I will feel happy when I lose the weight. No, rather than that, feel empowered to know you can change your thoughts, which is going to directly change your physiology, which is going to influence how you move every day. And I don't mean just like exercise, but the decisions you make, the choices in thoughts, the choices in content, the choices in food, the choices in exercise. Like, how you think directly affects how you choose to move through the day, and over time that becomes a habit, and that habit becomes the personality that you create, and that evolves into your personal reality that you live within. So that's just something to consider that I've been working through and I've been studying quite a bit, and I think that's what pertains to mental health and how that affects our physical health and vice versa. So on that note, our thoughts or our beliefs, they trigger emotions or feelings in our physiology based on the perceptions of events in our lives that are built off of past experiences that we've gone through. And so I think something to think about there is, you can think about, maybe you've grown up always excited about Christmas. And so when you start thinking about Christmas, you get excited, you get those feelings of, adrenaline in an exciting way, and endorphins and dopamine and all these things. And you're always anticipating an event based on what you've learned in the past. Now that can work on the flip side. I shared a story recently on the podcast where I was, up on my balcony of my condo, and I was watching a woman. I wasn't really watching her. I was just out there looking and having my coffee, and I, heard her pull her dog away from some pile of leaves, saying, watch out, something's going to get you. And that, regardless if she was just kidding or if something actually happened in the past, it reminded me that what happens in our past directly affects how we see the world and how we move forward. And so if something traumatic happened to you in your past, maybe something you were afraid of or something that injured you, that's going to create a memory. And our brains are literally artifacts. Like, they collect memories and experiences, and it helps us move forward. So our brain is always scanning for different potential threats to our lives. So it's just something to think about when you think about how the mind and body work together. And it really comes down to, when people say thoughts become things, like, I agree with that, but I also believe it's like your thoughts create chemical reactions that affect your physiology, that influence how you feel and how you choose to move. Like, it's going to be the difference of you going left or going right, something like that. And so on that note, also to think about is, our emotions are the end products of past experiences, whether those are external or internal. And that's where the mind becomes really powerful, because just the same way an event you experience in your physical reality triggers these thoughts, triggers these emotions and beliefs, you can close your eyes and you can think of something that you want or something you don't want, and you can elicit a feeling that is similar. There's no difference between how the brain perceives that, and it elicits the same chemicals. So if you think about, you're doing something like this, you're presenting something and you are fearful, you're going to feel fear and stress. Your body's going to release cortisol and adrenaline, and you're going to have these emotions that are similar to ones you felt in the past. And that's going to maybe prevent you from acting on what you want. But if you flip it and you think about how, what you're envisioning, you're going to get up, you're going to give a great presentation, you're going to deliver your message, you're going to feel good, you're going to create connection, and then you start thinking about what does that feel like? What does success feel like to me? What does going out and reaching my goal feel like? What does becoming that version of myself that I envision in the future feel like? And you can feel that now. And if you can repeat that every day to the best of your abilities, you're going to feel more, quote unquote, motivated, which that's a whole nother topic as well. But you're going to feel the energy that's going to allow you to move forward and create the change that you want in your life. So I think that's something that is also becoming more talked about. And in this group, we talk about that all the time, your emotions, your mindset, your thoughts, but also in the mental world, the third component is your spirituality. So your connection to something larger than yourself. Everyone has their own belief structures, but at the end of the day, I find it's really important and it's really empowering to believe that there's something higher than yourself, and that we're all connected, and that we're all just energy in our own ways, in our own manners. And if we're working towards a similar goal of becoming the best versions of ourselves and contributing to our society, and not making it solely about ourselves, which is a talk I give, Off Self on Purpose, which I learned through my experiences that it was more empowering, more impactful, more meaningful, and fulfilling to me to be focused on serving other people than just being focused on myself. Because when we're selfish, it's not negative. There's no reason to look at it negative, but it just means we're insecure about something, we're fearful about something. So our mind works in our favor to narrow its focus onto self, and that's where we get selfish from. But when you start broadening your awareness to how you can contribute to other people in your life that you may know or may not know, I feel that has brought me a lot more positive energy and drive to move forward through challenges that occur. So spirituality is very important, and everyone's going to define that differently, whether that's, meditation, that's yoga, that's religion, that's whatever. But at the end of the day, if you found something that makes you feel connected to something larger than yourself, I think that is one of the night and day differences of waking up feeling driven to overcome your challenges, to overcome your fears, injuries, heartache, whatever it may be. Being attached to a purpose and connected to something larger than you is going to be really helpful. The final two pieces are community. So like what we're doing here, auditing your relationships, looking for support, which is something I tried to be a vehicle of, is support, based on my own experiences, what I've learned, my studies, my, conversations, my experiences, and just, again, feeling connected. So we're human beings. We are designed to want to feel love and support and guidance and to be understood. And I see that's why we have so much conflict, is because everyone wants to be understood, but I think to be understood, you have to understand other people. You have to understand yourself, most importantly. And the more you understand yourself, the more you can also understand other people, and then you'll be able to learn how to communicate with other people of other areas of life and be able to get your point across and to be understood ultimately. So I think community is a huge aspect that some people think, I got to just do it on my own. I'm going to do it on my own. Like the whole self-made thing, I believe that's bullshit, to be honest. I don't believe that they're self-made. I think that anyone that says that it has an insecurity that they haven't dealt with, because if they think about it, there was someone that gave them an opportunity. There was someone that helped them along the way. There was someone that said something. There was someone that taught them something. They didn't just be born into all this knowledge and skills. Like, they had to learn that from somewhere. So that's my little rant about community. And then finally, I kind of touched on this already, but purpose and fulfillment. And so I think that when we have something that we're working towards that's more meaningful than just affecting ourselves, which we have to start with ourselves. A lot of people ask me, like, how can I find my purpose? Like, how did you find your purpose? Honestly, I found my purpose through becoming the best version of myself. Started out on self to fulfill a dream to become a professional BMX athlete. I made that happen. And as I call them, wake-up calls, I had many wake-up calls along the way, 3 of which were brain tumor diagnosis. And that really inspired a new perspective on my life, and it allowed me to audit how I was showing up, what I was doing to contribute, all these different aspects. And the more I got focused on my purpose and got clarity around my purpose or my why, like why I do all I do, it was because I want to help people. I wanted to help people change in a state of joy and inspiration rather than pain and suffering, the way I was forced to change. Think proactive rather than reactive. I had to react to a lot of situations in my life because I was moving through my life unconscious. I had a kind of like a hazy vision I was working towards, but when things were happening, I wasn't sure why they were happening to me, or why I was getting the same results, or why I was, showing up how I was showing up. And it took these wake-up calls for me to get really on purpose. And that's what allowed me to walk away from a childhood dream that I was living for a new dream. And here we are today. And that's allowed me to be more fulfilled, to feel more fulfilled. And I noticed that whenever I'm so focused on my purpose, I start to move forward past fears and move through fears and things like this, which a lot of people don't understand about me, is because I do so much video and so much talking and so much content creation. It's something that I'm still insecure about. It's something I judge myself about. I'm very critical of myself about. But I think about it as like, who am I trying to become? What am I trying to work towards? It's not going to be perfect. No one's perfect. There's always going to be something I can improve on, and that's the beauty of being a human being. But the more I'm focused on the purpose of like the message I'm trying to deliver, why I'm doing this, right now, the more I'm able to take action and the more fulfilled I feel, because rather than being afraid to take action and then being resentful towards myself later, or feeling shameful or guilty or frustrated or feeling like a failure, I at least took action. And the more action I take, the more progress I'm going to make. So that just is something that I've found has been really transformative for me, is being so focused on purpose, which is something beyond myself, allows me to step into the power to move past my fears and insecurities, and ultimately allows me to live a life that is more fulfilled than when I was just focused on self. And I was wondering why I was stressed, or I was, whatever it was at the time. And so that's how I would break down health. And I would love to hear what you guys have to say. To me, for recap, for people just tuning in now, health to me is made up of the mental, the spiritual, and the physical aspect of our beings. And to categorize them into two core elements, it's the physical and the mental side of things. And that's where we can kind of split apart the body and the mind. The brain's going to be in either one of them. The brain's that gray area, but that's just how I see health. And I challenge you to think about how you see health and maybe what you learned from this. And, there was a couple questions that were commented on my post the other day about today's episode. And the first one was, what's the one thing we can do to improve our brain health? And to me, I think the one thing we can do is regulate our stress. And I mentioned stress earlier and how that shows up, but specifically how we can regulate our stress is audit our thoughts and our emotions and ask ourselves if these are serving us. But then also look at food and exercise, sleep, and these things, all these things that affect our blood sugar. And if that doesn't make sense to you, reach out and I'll create some content around what that really looks like and what that means. But some other of these questions actually address that, so I'll go into that in a minute. But the best thing that I've learned we can do is regulate our blood sugar, because that's going to regulate how much inflammation we potentially have, how much free radical damage we potentially have, and all these things are going to contribute to the stress that we feel mentally or physically. So the second question is finding the right blood test for tracking changes in diet and overall health. And again, I think one of the most profound ways we can track what we're doing and how it's affecting our health is tracking our glucose. So you can buy a glucometer, a glucose meter kit, for like $35 on Amazon, and then you can get a pack of 30 strips for like $10. And I think if you can track that, and I have videos and all sorts of stuff and on this topic as well, but if you can track your fasting glucose, your baseline before meal, and then track in 30-minute increments up to 2 hours after a meal and see what it does, and then maybe before bed, do that for a couple of days, for a couple of weeks. And then also you can get an A1C test from your physician, regular lab work right there, or you can get a kit off Amazon. I think if you can track those, you're going to learn about what those mean and how to optimize those. That's going to give you your most bang for your buck, the most return on investment right there. And that's going to lead to a lot of profound changes in your health and your performance physically and mentally. And then another one, I talked a lot about inflammation. Something you can ask your physician for is a CRP test. And that's going to look at your C-reactive protein, or basically it's going to look at your levels of inflammation. You can look at cortisol and other things like that, but that's more complicated. But I think looking at your A1C, your glucose, and all sorts of parameters I mentioned, and your CRP could be a good start. And then working with a functional medicine doctor that can help you get really dialed in on those if you want to learn more on other tests. But I think that's a great place to start. And that's what I've been doing for years and been learning more about and collaborating with other doctors on that, and seeing a lot of progress with my own clients and myself specifically of how to optimize change and see, you can actually measure how it's affected. And something I'll also mention is, I'm a big proponent of the ketogenic diet as a tool and a lifestyle. And that's the only diet that you can actually measure a blood marker to see if you're doing it correctly for your individuality. That's really cool. You can test your blood to see if you're making what's called beta hydroxybutyrate, or BHB. It's a blood ketone, which is the byproduct of burning fat. So ketogenic diet, it's a diet that puts you into a metabolic state that's creating ketones in your blood. Those ketones come from burning fat. So ketogenic diet, if you do it properly and with a great understanding of how it works for you, you can be burning fat, and that will show up as a ketone in your blood, which is really, I think, really fascinating, because all these other diets people talk about, there's no way to track how you're doing them other than following a parameter of food and limiting other food. Ketogenic diet, there's multiple ways to follow it per the person, and to create ketones in your system. So I think that's a really fascinating thing. Third question, counting calories and macros, question mark. I think this is a great option for those that have a very specific goal in mind, depending on where they're coming from. And this is a challenge I have with a lot of my clients that are type A, that have heard of fasting, heard of macros, heard of keto, heard of like all these things. They're like, hey, how many calories should I be eating? What should my macros? I'm like, we got to work on a lot of foundational work first and then build that momentum with getting more specific into the nitty gritty. And I guarantee you'll see progress along that route before we even get into calories and macros. The reason I say that is because if we've gone however long we've gone unconsciously to what we've been doing, what we've been tracking, and then we've heard all these key buzzwords and we're trying to learn, we're trying to track, those are way too many changes to build habits around that are going to be successful for the long run. You may get results for 21 days, for 30 days, 90 days, but then you're going to wake up one day, not always, but this is a common theme, is why all of a sudden is it not working? Because you don't have, I argue, it's because the person doesn't have the right understanding of what they changed, why they changed it, what it's doing, how it's working for them. They just hear other people talk about their experiences. So when it comes to calories, that's a whole gray area, and I think it's just irrelevant to focus on at the beginning. Same with macros. I think it's definitely great to start tracking those things just to get an understanding. Ask questions, do your research. That's what I do with my clients, as I help them through that. But it's a lot of foundational work that needs to be done before you even get to thinking you should track calories or track macros. It's a lot of nonsense based on a lot of media and marketing that we've seen and heard of, and it's too much to give a generalized answer to that question. And that's why I do individualized work with people, because it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, where you are in your life, what you want your lifestyle to look like, how you want to get there, how quickly you want to get there, all of these things. So when it comes to counting calories and macros, it depends. That's the most honest answer I can give. It depends. It's context driven. And that's not even where I would suggest starting. I would just suggest starting of auditing your personal, your personality, your reality that you're living in, what you want and what you desire and why you don't have those things, and what you could be auditing that you're choosing to do every day, consciously or unconsciously. Start there, because your perspective and your awareness of who you are and how you show up in the world is going to give you the ability to go dive deeper into macros, calories, blood tests, and all these things. Although on that note, I do believe blood tests are a great perspective shift in the beginning, because you can quantify what that number means, the risk factors that come with that, and that could be like a night and day wake up call for someone that wants to get serious about making change in their life to increase their health and performance. Fourth question, can you consume too many electrolytes? What first comes to mind is when you start consuming too many electrolytes, especially sodium, it's going to have you running to the bathroom. And it's a phrase that Dave Asprey refers to as disaster pants. And I'll leave it there. So when it comes to consuming too many electrolytes, yes, you can. I believe first it's going to start with your digestive tract. You're going to experience discomfort there. We'll use that word. And then thereafter, there could be different complications when you get into potassium, magnesium, and all these just different overconsumption. But I don't think that's going to be a challenge, or I don't think that's going to be an issue for most people, because you're going to be running the bathroom before you decide to continue consuming too many electrolytes. That's just my perspective on that. Fifth question, fasted or fueled workouts? Again, like calories and macros, it depends. It's too much of it's a basic question, but it's a super complex question. The idea is, should I work out fasted, meaning didn't eat or drink anything besides water, maybe some electrolytes, maybe some black coffee, maybe some exogenous ketones before a workout? Or should I fuel up? Should I have a snack? Should I have a protein shake? Should I have a meal? It really depends on what your goals are. Some people work out to build muscle. Some people work out to maintain. Some people work out to burn fat. Some people work out because they're trying to change their physical shape in different ways. There's so much goes into it, especially where are you in your journey? Are you just working out for the first time? I think I remember who asked this question, and I know that they do live an active lifestyle. They do work out quite regularly. They do a lot of lifting. It just depends on what you're trying to achieve. It depends on why you asked that question, and how do you experience that fasted workout or a fueled workout? Do you notice any benefit from one or the other? How long have you done it? Have you tracked your progress? Things like that. So again, that's another one of those questions that's just, my answer is it depends. Depends on what you're trying to do. Depends on why you're asking that and where you're trying to go. The final question, My question is about reaching consistency. I have all of the information that I need, and I know how. And I know why, but somewhere along the way, I might need some ways to stay on track and to not give up. So that's a deep, loaded question. And to give an answer to that, I would feel out of integrity because that's such a context driven question. Um, but to the beginning, the question's about reaching consistency. And I think I can answer that part truthfully and honestly and authentically. And that's something I'm experiencing. I'm reading the book Atomic Habits. And James Clear, the author, he is someone that I never heard of before until I started hearing about this book. My coach told me to read it, and I've been loving it, and she was spot on. And he talks a lot about the science of creating change and the science of building new habits, the science of breaking old habits, the dopamine, the feedback loops, like all of these things that go into creating consistency, if you will. And I think the best way to approach consistency, if you've done the work to where you have all the information, you said, you know how and you know your why, but somewhere along the way you might need some ways to stay on track and to not give up. That's when I would look at, are you trying to do too much at once? That becomes one of the biggest topics that I think are overlooked when we're looking at consistency. A lot of people think, man, I just need more motivation. I just need more discipline. I just need more drive. And it's like, well, a lot of it comes down to understanding who you are, your habits, your why, your purpose of why you want to change and where you're trying to go. But if you have those things, for the sake of this question, if you have those things in line, I think it would just be, asking yourself, are you trying to change too much? Are you trying to do too many things at once? Have you optimized when you're trying to do whatever you're trying to do? And if it's not working here, or something Atomic Habits talks a lot about is your environment and the cues that are around you that are cueing your brain to remember a past experience, to anticipate a future experience based on something, and all these things. So I guess the long answer short I would give is I would just ask yourself actually, why are you not staying consistent? And then number two, are you trying to do too many things at once? We have to build on top of habits, and if we try to do too many things at once, which is in good intentions, it can backfire to us sometimes. And also maybe what habits and what goals are you trying to do or trying to reach, and are they too big? Because when we say something like, hey, I'm going to go to the gym 4 days a week for an hour, and we go 45 minutes, 35 minutes, 55 minutes, we unconsciously know we didn't reach that 1 hour a day goal, and then we feel like a failure. We feel frustrated, we feel shameful, we feel guilty. And that could discourage us from staying consistent because we get into the mindset of protection mode from our ego saying, well, you failed the last 3 times because you didn't go for an hour, so you might as well just stop going altogether. Because that's how our unconscious mind works to keep us safe, even though it's not a life or death situation. So I would just ask yourself those questions, like, are you trying to do too much? Are you trying to do too much in terms of what you're trying to do in that one thing maybe? So are you trying to do too many things, or too big of a goal? I think there's just a lot that goes into that. And it's just, again, I can't feel an integrity giving an answer to that based on not knowing much else, because there's a lot of questions that I already have in mind that I would go through with that, and that's just what I've been experiencing. So for me, it was just trying to do too much at once, trying to do too much in the one thing I was trying to do among the other things. So with all that being said, I want to thank you guys for listening, and that's just, to me, what I think is important when we talk about health is, first, how do you define health to yourself? I went through the actual definitions of some that I found, and I shared my perspective on what health means to me, with the mental, the physical, and the spiritual aspect of our human beings, us living as a human being. And I believe that it's the level of performance and I guess congruency with all 3 of those elements. That's how I measure health in my own being. So I break that down to physical and mental, and all the things that I think we would contribute to health, whether it's sleep, it's exercise, it's stress, it's food, it's toxins, relationships, community. I think they can be categorized in either one of them. I think those are all the main important elements. And if I missed any, which is why I wrote notes out for this, so I didn't miss any, but if I missed any that come to mind for you, I'd love to hear from you about that. And some questions I want to leave you guys with, and I want you to take these serious and give them some time. But the first one is, again, what does health mean to you, and where are you with your health, mentally and physically? So I want you to think about that. Really audit. Are you where you want to go? Are you stagnant? Are you continuing to grow? Are you happy with that? But ultimately, what does health mean to you, and where are you with your physical and mental health? The next one I want to leave you guys with is, has anything that I've shared changed your perspective on your health or brought up questions or ideas of what you can do to make some changes to optimize the way you're showing up in life, the way you're increasing your health and performance, or ways you can? So I really want you to think about that. And then also, on that note, what's holding you back from the ideal version of health, mentally and physically, for yourself? And again, it's important to remember things like career, spirituality, relationships, education, finances, like all of these things, as well as sleep, food, exercise, um, stress, like all these things make up our health or contribute to affecting our health one way or another. So think about those things and audit, like, where are you with your life in these different aspects? And I would challenge you, if you're not a 10 at all of them, which, some people may be a 10 here and maybe a 6 here, but think about how you can increase those areas, and also think about how they're contributing to the decline in other areas that you're maybe wanting to see a higher experience with. And then final two questions I have for you guys are, what are you willing to do to make the changes that you need to achieve the ideal version of your health? So if you're not happy with one aspect of your life and that's contributing to or negatively contributing to your health, what are you willing to do to make some changes? And finally, make sure to reach out if you guys have questions. I really appreciate you guys hearing what I have to share today. I'd love to hear any feedback from you, any questions, anything I maybe left out, anything you would want to hear me dive in further. But ultimately, I just appreciate you guys showing up. Again, this is a Change Maker series. This is all about creating conscious awareness and change in our lives. So that way we can consciously design our lives to the ideal vision we hold in our lives, which is all about optimizing our health and our performance, ultimately our being and how we show up in everyday life. And if we're just going through the motions and we're unhappy, but we're just doing it, we're just working that job because it pays the bills, we're just eating that food because it's routine or it's available, but we're unhappy. Like, if we're just unconsciously living through life, it's going to be hard, near impossible to get to where we actually want to go. And that's a whole other topic I want to dive into later on, about the fear of change. And there's different elements that I've experienced and that I've also experienced with talking with other people that I think is really important to have a conversation about. But at the end of the day, I'm just really appreciative of you guys. I'm appreciative of this community that we're growing, and I just want you guys to have the tools that I wish I had, and maybe some new perspective around tools that I'm sharing that you've already aware of, but just some new perspective, because that's what it took for me to change my life. So at the end of the day, I'm just trying to help people change their lives. And so I appreciate you guys. Again, if you guys have any questions, any comments, anything, let me know, and I'll speak to you guys later.